Have you ever been inside an old cinema at night? When the projector is off, the screen is blank, and the seats around you are swallowed by the dark? Most people think abandoned cinemas are nothing more than empty buildings, dusty seats, broken projectors, peeling posters of movies no one remembers. But in reality, these places hold something much darker. There are countless urban legends about haunted movie theaters around the world. People whisper about cursed reels, shadows moving between the aisles, and films that were never supposed to be shown. And when the lights go out, some claim the screen itself becomes a gateway to something terrifying. Tonight, I'll tell you three true scary stories that all happened inside an abandoned cinema. These are not ordinary ghost tales. Each one will make you question whether you'll ever feel safe sitting in a dark theater again. The first story is about a student who discovered a film reel hidden in the projection room, a film that should never have existed. The second tells of a group of urban explorers who broke into an old theater for fun, but left with scars they would carry forever. And the third one is about a security guard who vanished while on his night shift, leaving behind only one chilling clue: So sit back, dim the lights, and prepare yourself. Because once you hear these stories, you might never look at a cinema screen the same way again. Story 1. The Lost Film Reel. It was the kind of place most people walked past without even noticing. The old Crescent Cinema stood in the middle of town, abandoned for decades. Its cracked windows were boarded up, and the once bright marquee was now nothing more than a rusting skeleton of letters. Locals said the last movie shown there was sometime in the 1970s, but nobody remembered which film it was. Daniel, a university student studying film history, had always been obsessed with old theaters. He'd heard rumors that the Crescent still had its original projection room intact, and maybe, just maybe, some forgotten reels of film. To him, this was like treasure hunting. One stormy evening, Daniel slipped through a broken side door and entered the theater. The air inside was heavy with mildew and dust. Rows of tattered red seats stretched toward the blank white screen, now yellowed with age. His flashlight beam cut across the room, illuminating fragments of torn posters on the walls. The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, Psycho. Daniel climbed up the narrow staircase to the projection booth. Inside, he found exactly what he had hoped for: a dusty projector, still mounted in place, and stacks of film canisters. Most of them were rusted shut, their labels too faded to read. But one canister stood out. It was cleaner than the rest, as if someone had placed it there recently. Its label had no title, no date, only a single word scrawled in black marker: Don't. Curiosity overwhelmed him. He took the reel, carefully threaded it into the projector, and switched on the machine. After a painful screech of gears, the film began to play. At first, the screen showed nothing unusual. Grainy black and white footage of the Crescent Cinema itself, filmed decades earlier. The camera panned across the lobby, the concession stand, the aisles of seats. Then it cut to the screen inside the theater. The same screen Daniel was looking at right now, but something felt wrong. The theater on the film wasn't empty. Figures were sitting in the seats. Dozens of them, all facing forward, motionless. Daniel froze. He turned his flashlight toward the real auditorium below, empty. Yet on the film, every seat was occupied by shadowy shapes. The camera moved closer to the front row. The figures became clearer, though their faces were strangely blurred, as if the film refused to capture them. And then, one by one, the heads of the shadowy figures began to turn, not toward the screen, but toward the camera. Toward him, the projector flickered, and suddenly Daniel saw himself on the film. He was standing in the projection booth, exactly as he was right now, shining his flashlight. The reel wasn't just showing the past, it was showing the present. And then something changed. In the film, the door behind him slowly opened. A tall, dark figure stepped inside the projection room, moving silently toward him that Daniel's heart pounded as he spun around. But the real door was shut. No one was there. He whipped his head back to the screen. The figure was closer now, right behind him in the film. The projector rattled and the reel suddenly snapped, whipping around violently. The film strip flapped loose and the screen went black. Daniel fumbled for his flashlight and bolted down the stairs, across the empty auditorium, and out through the broken door into the storm. He never returned to the Crescent Cinema. Later, when he developed the courage to tell his professor what happened, he was told something chilling. The Crescent Cinema had indeed been closed after a tragedy in the projection booth. The last projectionist was found dead inside, strangled by a length of film reel. And according to records, the last movie ever shown there had no official title. It was listed in the archives simply as Don't. Story 2. The explorer's urban exploring had always been more about adrenaline than discovery. For Mason and his three friends, sneaking into abandoned buildings was just another way to prove they weren't afraid of anything. They had explored old factories, schools, even a half-collapsed hospital. But when Mason suggested they try the Crescent Cinema, the others hesitated. People say it's haunted, his friend Josh joked nervously as they stood outside the crumbling building one autumn night. Perfect, Mason smirked, pushing open a side door with a crowbar. Let's make it our next adventure. The group stepped inside. Their flashlights sliced through the thick darkness, illuminating broken seats, shattered glass, and walls covered in graffiti. The silence was overwhelming, broken only by the sound of their footsteps crunching on debris at a first. It was fun. They laughed, took photos, and dared each other to sit alone in the empty auditorium. But as they explored deeper, the atmosphere began to shift in the lobby. Josh found a pile of ticket stubs scattered across the floor, all dated the same night, October 31st, 1974, the night the theater officially closed. Creepy, he muttered, dropping them. Upstairs, Sarah discovered a row of children's shoes neatly lined along the wall of the balcony. None of them looked older than 7 or 8 years old. She backed away quickly, her face pale. Probably staged, Mason said, trying to sound confident. But even he was starting to feel uneasy. Finally, they made their way to the basement. According to local rumors, the Crescent had a second screening room underground, one that was never open to the public. The door was heavy, rusted, but still unlocked. Mason pushed it open with a groan. Inside, they found the hidden auditorium. Unlike the rest of the building, this room looked almost untouched. The seats were intact, the floor clean, the projector perfectly positioned. It was as if someone had been maintaining it in secret. "Okay, this is freaky," Sarah whispered. Suddenly, the projector clicked on by itself. None of them had touched it. A beam of light shot across the room, illuminating the screen. Static filled the speakers, followed by distorted audio, a faint, muffled sound like people whispering. The screen flickered, and an image appeared. The four of them, standing exactly where they were. Mason's heart stopped. It was like a live feed, but no camera was visible. "Is this us?" Josh stammered. The figures on the screen stood frozen for a moment, then slowly began to move on their own. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, like puppets pulled by invisible strings. The screen versions of Mason and his friends turned to look at the audience. And then, in the grainy projection, Mason's double smiled, with a wide, unnatural grin that stretched far beyond human possibility. "Turn it off," Sarah screamed. Mason rushed to the projector, but the machine was too hot to touch, the reel spinning violently on its own. When he looked back, the screen had changed. The doubles were gone. Instead, the audience seats were full, row after row of faceless silhouettes staring straight ahead, point one by one. The real seats in the underground auditorium creaked. The explorers froze as shapes began to rise out of them. Tall, shadowy figures, featureless, yet somehow aware. The air grew suffocating. "Run," Mason whispered. They bolted for the door, but Josh tripped, his scream echoing as something dragged him back into the darkness. Sarah reached for him, but Mason yanked her away. Together with the last of their group, they burst into the main lobby and out into the street. When they finally looked back, the side door slammed shut on its own. They never saw Josh again. Later, when Mason went through the photos on his phone, he found something chilling. In every single picture taken inside the theater, there was an extra figure standing among them, tall, blurred, and always looking directly at the camera. Story 3. The last guard. When the Crescent Cinema was officially condemned in the late 1990s, the city hired a private security firm to keep watch over the property. Vandalism, squatters, and teenage thrill seekers had become common problems. For most guards, the job was boring. Long nights of silence, broken only by the sound of rats scurrying in the walls. But for Harold, a veteran night guard in his 50s, the Crescent was different. From the very first shift, he felt uneasy inside the building. The air was too still, too heavy. It was the kind of place where silence pressed against your ears, where every shadow seemed just a little too deep. Harold kept a notebook in which he logged strange occurrences. The first entries were minor. 11:47 p.m. Projector light flickered on second floor, no power connected. 1:05 a.m. Heard footsteps in auditorium, but all seats empty. 3:12 a.m. Door to basement locked when checked earlier, now wide open. Weeks passed. The entries became darker. Harold began hearing voices, faint, overlapping whispers, like an audience murmuring during a film. They grew louder at night, sometimes rising into screams before abruptly cutting off. The worst came one evening when Harold conducted his routine patrol. As he swept his flashlight across the main auditorium, every single seat was filled. Dozens of pale figures sat in silence, facing the blank screen, their heads turned toward him all at once. By the time he blinked, the seats were empty again. Harold didn't tell his supervisors. He was afraid they'd think he was crazy, but he kept writing in his notebook. Each entry was more frantic than the last. Finally, one night, the notebook stopped. The following morning, Harold's supervisor arrived to relieve him, but Harold was nowhere to be found. His patrol radio was left on the security desk, still crackling with static. His flashlight lay at the entrance to the underground screening room, its battery dead, and inside that hidden auditorium. The projector was running, the police were called, but the film reel they found playing was unlike anything anyone had seen. Grainy, distorted footage of Harold himself appeared on screen. He was sitting alone in one of the auditorium seats, staring straight ahead. Behind him, row after row of figures slowly emerged from the darkness surrounding him. The reel ended there, burning itself out. The officers searched every inch of the building. No sign of Harold was ever found. The only clue left behind was his notebook, discovered under the projector. The last entry read, "They don't want me to leave. The movie isn't over." To this day, no guard has ever agreed to take a shift at the Crescent Cinema again. The building stands locked and sealed, but locals still say that if you walk past it late at night, you can hear the faint hum of the projector. And sometimes, if you dare to peek through the cracks in the boarded windows, you might see an audience watching something only the dead can understand. Asterisk, the Crescent Cinema may look like just another forgotten building, but its stories tell us otherwise. A cursed film reel, explorers who never came back, and a guard who vanished while on duty, all tied to the same abandoned theater. Places like this remind us that sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. Some movies never end, and some audiences are still waiting in the dark. That if you enjoyed these terrifying stories and want to hear more, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your own experiences in the comments below. Who knows, maybe one day your story will be featured here. And remember, next time you sit down in a cinema and the lights go out, look around carefully, because not everyone in the audience might be alive.